In today's video, we're going to be taking 5 Lego photos. However, there is a little bit of a twist. For every photo we take, we have to add 1 extra minifigure, which means by the time we get to our 5th and final photo, well, if we've done the maths right, we're going to have 5 Lego minifigures on screen. That's a lot of minifigures. Anyway, let's get into it.
So first we need to establish our main character. We're going to call him Eric, and he's going to feature across all 5 of these photos because he has a dream, and that dream is to be an explorer. So for this first scene, we're going to create a nice grassy meadow with some trees and some beautiful flowers. So we've used these grass mats, which you can pick up from quite a lot of hobby stores nowadays. The background was actually a cutout from a calendar, although it was slightly too dark of a blue, so we did change it out for a slightly lighter one. As you can see, we're just adding in the trees and the flowers. Eric is enjoying reading one of his books because that's kind of how he lives his adventures through the books. So we're just going to finish off this scene here by adding in some trees in the background. It just gives a bit more depth to the photo before it's finally completed.
So here's our first photo. It's come out pretty well. We've established our main character Eric, and he's reading his favorite book, A Great Adventure. And this is a Wild Western book. That's what we're going to pretend, because for our second photo, where we need to add in another minifigure, we're going to take Eric into the Wild West. So let's start building it.
First things first, we need to tear down that previous scene, which is a shame because it did look good. And then we're going to go and start creating our Wild West setup. So we're going to be using baking paper or greaseproof paper, and it's going to make life a lot easier when it comes to tidying up because we're going to sprinkle the sand directly on top of this paper. Another reason why I'm using this paper specifically is because it is a similar color to sand, which means it's not going to stick out like a sore thumb when we're creating the scene. Now the sand I'm using is modeling sand, and you can pretty much pick it up from any arts or craft store. It's fairly cheap. One thing I would recommend though is that you pick up your own sort of storage jar or tub just to put the sand in when you're done using it. So Eric is now landed in the Wild West. Here's his minifigure, and the second minifigure we're adding to this photo is a cactus. Into our second photo now, and as you can see, we're just putting down some dead grass pieces. I use this quite a lot when creating Western scenes because I think it looks really cool. And we're going to just pose our 2 figures like so. Adding in the background to finish this off, and there we have it, our first draft. Eric's looking pretty happy with himself in the Wild West. Although, I don't want this to be our second photo. I actually want to take this a little bit further, add in a bit of comedic fun, and have him being jump scared by a snake instead.
So as we can tell by the second photo, there is a little cactus minifigure involved, but his initial trip to the Wild West didn't go as planned because he has been scared off by a snake. Poor guy. But without further ado, let's go into photo number 3, where we need to add another minifigure.
So let's quickly take down the set before we add in our next character. And that is none other than an old man looking for some gold. Now that we're on to our third photo, we have to start thinking about the positioning of minifigures to make sure that we can fit all of them into the final photo. That's where the challenge starts to kick in. I also just want to focus on the story as well. So in this scene in particular, I'm going to have it so that the old man is giving Eric a treasure map, and that treasure map is going to lead him, well, you'd hope to, some buried treasure. We're just going to quickly finish piecing it together before we capture the photo.
So that's photo number 3, just going to put it here as always. And what we can tell is that Eric has met an old man who's given him a treasure map of sorts. So we're going to wonder, what is Eric going to find? And that means we've got to go into photo number 4, where we do have to add another minifigure. It's going to get a bit crowded on screen now. Let's jump into it and see what happens.
Now we know the drill. Before we can continue, we quickly need to dismantle the previous scene. And whilst we do that, I want to just point out that the old man at this stage has disappeared, which means we're adding 2 new minifigures, and they're both mummies. Now for this scene, I want Eric to have dug up the treasure chest, and obviously when you've dug up a treasure chest, you're going to create a pile of sand, so that's exactly what we're doing here. We're just getting a nice little mound of sand before we place the chest at the top of it. Now I'm just going to cover up the chest a little bit with the shovel that Eric would have used before we place it just behind. Eric in this scene is going to be absolutely terrified because he's got a pair of mummies running towards him. He didn't realise that the treasure chest was in fact protected by these mummies. Yes, we've also got the cactus in the background. We're going to see what his emotions are looking like when we take the photo in just a second.
So here's photo number 4. Eric at this point is a bit terrified because although he has found the treasure, he's being attacked by a couple of mummies, which is not looking good for him. And, you know, our cactus guy in the background's just as scared. I wonder what is going to happen in our final scene. It's going into photo number 5, which means we need to add 1 more minifigure. We're going to have 5 minifigures in total for this photo, so it is at this point very crowded. Let's jump into it and see what happens.
Now for this scene, I'm not going to dismantle it completely because I do want to keep the chest where it is. And surprise, look who's back, it's the old man, and this time he's riding a horse and he's got himself a gun as well. So we're going to put him into position. The idea for this scene is that he's going to be gunning down the mummies. Eric is absolutely terrified, so we're going to position him there with his hands covering his face. I've actually used a support beam here as well, you may notice, for one of the mummies to have him flying through the air. This was a bit of a challenge because we've had to fit 5 minifigures into the scene, but we've managed to pull it off by actually dismantling one of them and having the body scattered across.
So here's photo number 5, and Eric is still terrified, although the old man has turned up to try and save him. He's blasted one of the mummies away, the other mummy is already in pieces, and our cactus is, well, at this point just being the emotions throughout this entire photo shoot that we've done. That's all 5 of our photos, although I would think we do need to know how it ends. So I'm going to throw in a bonus picture. Let's set it up and see how it ends.
So I've removed all of the minifigures from that previous scene. I've reached over to grab the treasure chest. I've opened it to find that there is in fact a load of gold inside of it. So the old man's map was in fact accurate. There was a treasure chest and it did have lots of gold. So that means I've changed Eric's face back to his normal one. He's pretty smug that he's managed to secure this treasure, albeit he had a lot of help. We're also adding in one of the dead mummies. This shot, I just wanted to go for more like an end game kind of shot where it's going to establish our 3 main characters and what they've achieved. And it's one of those kind of happy ever after kind of photos.
Now here's the bonus picture. The old man did save the day. He managed to blast those mummies away. Eric has survived as well, and he's pretty chuffed with himself because now he's got a treasure chest full of gold to share with his friends. And the cactus, you know, he's over the moon because, let's face it, probably the richest cactus in the Wild West. And that brings our story to a close, and also the challenge where we had to take 5 photos and add 1 extra minifigure per photo. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a thumbs up. And if you want to see more content, be sure to subscribe. I'll see you next time.